Egypt, a land of golden sands, towering pyramids, and ancient temples that echo with the voices of the past. For centuries, this cradle of civilization has drawn the curious, the scholars, and the seekers of truth. While most recognize Egypt for its visible grandeur, its monuments, its pharaohs, its hieroglyphs, few truly understand the deep spiritual codes hidden within its heart. Beneath the layers of stone and history lies a powerful metaphysical current, one that shaped not only Egyptian culture, but also the spiritual philosophies of the world that followed. The ancient Egyptians didn't merely build to impress, they built to encode. Every structure, every symbol, every ritual was designed to reflect a deeper cosmic truth. The temples were more than places of worship, they were portals of initiation. The gods were more than mythic characters, they were cosmic principles made manifest. The afterlife was more than a hope, it was a science, known and explored through sacred geometry, sound, alchemy, and the inner journey of the soul. Yet, many of these truths remain hidden, veiled under modern interpretations and lost translations. What if the Sphinx wasn't just a monument, but a guardian of cosmic time? What if the pyramid's design was meant to mirror the structure of the human body and soul? What if the Eye of Horus was a map to inner awakening, not just a symbol of protection? This script will guide you through 7 spiritual truths buried deep within Egypt's ancient wisdom, secrets that most have never heard. Truths kept alive by mystery schools and initiates for thousands of years. It's time to peel back the veil, look beyond the sand, and rediscover the spiritual blueprint that ancient Egypt has left behind for those who dare to see. When we think of Egypt, we immediately picture the mighty pyramids, especially the Great Pyramid of Giza. Tourists marvel at its precision, historians debate its construction, and yet, few recognize it as a living spiritual monument. The ancients never referred to it simply as a tomb. Instead, it was seen as a sacred machine, a geometric mirror of both the cosmos and the human soul. The pyramid's design is encoded with mathematical and cosmological wisdom. The proportions reflect Earth's dimensions with uncanny accuracy. The angles correspond to planetary movements. The layout aligns with Orion's belt, 3 stars that the ancient Egyptians associated with Osiris, the god of resurrection. Why such cosmic precision for a mere tomb? The answer lies in understanding the pyramid not as a grave, but as a gateway. Initiates of the Egyptian mystery schools believed the pyramid to be a place of spiritual initiation. Its dark passageways symbolized the soul's journey through death, not just physical death, but the death of the ego. The ascending passages led to the king's chamber, representing spiritual rebirth or enlightenment. This journey mirrored the inner transformation required to awaken higher consciousness. The acoustics within the chambers weren't accidental. Sound resonated in sacred frequencies, particularly 111 Hz, a tone linked to altered states of consciousness. Chanting or meditating inside the chamber could activate visionary experiences. In modern terms, the pyramid was like a cosmic tuning fork, helping initiates harmonize with divine frequencies. Moreover, the pyramid's shape itself has deep energetic significance. The square base and pointed apex symbolize the union of earth and the heavens. The 4 sides represent the elements earth, air, fire, and water, rising towards spiritual unity. This isn't architecture, it's alchemy in stone. Even today, many feel a strange power inside the pyramid. Some describe visions, others report heightened awareness. Scientists remain baffled, but the ancient Egyptians wouldn't be surprised. They knew that true ascension was not about escaping the earth, but transforming the self. The pyramid code isn't just about ancient stone, it's about the soul's architecture. Each of us carries within a spiritual pyramid, layered with forgotten wisdom, waiting to be activated. The Great Pyramid was not just built from the outside in, but from the inside out, reflecting the divine potential within every seeker. As we journey deeper into Egypt's spiritual legacy, remember, the greatest mysteries are never out there, they are encoded in the sacred geometry of your own consciousness. In ancient Egyptian symbolism, few icons are as enigmatic and powerful as the Eye of Horus. Often worn as an amulet or painted on tombs and temples, this eye was not just a protective symbol, it was a blueprint for higher consciousness. To truly understand its spiritual depth, we must go beyond the myth. According to legend, Horus, the falcon-headed god of the sky, lost his left eye in a battle with his uncle Setha, force of chaos. The eye was later restored by Thoth, the god of wisdom. Thus, the Eye of Horus came to symbolize healing, wholeness, and spiritual vision. But there's more. If we overlay the Eye of Horus with a cross-section of the human brain, specifically the pineal gland and thalamus, something astonishing happens. The eye perfectly aligns with key components of the brain responsible for intuition, perception, and inner sight. Ancient Egyptians didn't have MRI machines, yet they encoded this sacred neuroanatomy in a symbol thousands of years ago. Why? The answer lies in their belief that spiritual insight came from within, from the inner eye, what we now call the third eye. The Eye of Horus was not just art, it was a map of inner awakening, guiding initiates to open their higher faculties and experience reality beyond the physical senses. Each part of the Eye of Horus also corresponds to a mathematical fraction, adding up to nearly a whole, 63/64. This missing piece was seen as the divine mystery, the part of knowledge that could only be accessed through spiritual growth, not intellectual understanding. It reflects the belief that, no matter how much we know, there's always more to seek, more truth hidden in the veil of the unseen. In rituals and temple initiations, the Eye of Horus was used as a visual meditation, a tool for activating the pineal gland and aligning the inner senses. It reminded the seeker that true vision doesn't come from the eyes, but from the soul. Interestingly, Horus's two eyes symbolize dual aspects of awareness. The right eye, associated with the sun, represented logic, reason, and the physical world. The left eye, associated with the moon, represented intuition, dreams, and the spiritual realm. Balance between these two was essential. To see fully, one needed both clarity and intuition, a unification of light and shadow, day and night, masculine and feminine energies. So when we wear the Eye of Horus today, or see it carved on ancient walls, we are witnessing a powerful reminder that the real temple is the mind, and the real awakening is the opening of the inner eye. The ancients left us this key not just to protect us from harm, but to help us see what lies beyond the veil. One of the least understood aspects of ancient Egyptian spirituality is the system of temple initiations, a series of sacred rites that guided a seeker through layers of inner transformation. These initiations weren't just symbolic rituals. They were deeply spiritual experiences, designed to awaken divine consciousness within the individual. The ancient temples, especially places like Abydos, Karnak, Luxor, and Philae, were not mere places of worship. They were living metaphysical universities, constructed with precision to align with cosmic forces. Each chamber, corridor, and sanctum served a distinct purpose in guiding the initiate through different levels of self-discovery. Initiates were not chosen at random. They were selected after years of preparation, purification, and training. Once inside the temple, they would undergo a series of challenges, often physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. These trials were designed to confront their deepest fears, break down the ego, and help them connect with the divine spark within. One of the most symbolic elements of these rituals was the death and rebirth ceremony. Initiates were symbolically killed in the dark chambers of the temple, immersed in total darkness, left alone, often in underground crypts or sacred pools. Here, stripped of all worldly identity, they would face their own shadow. It was believed that only by dying to the false self could one be reborn in divine truth. After passing through these tests, the initiate would emerge, often during sunrise, symbolizing resurrection. They would then receive secret teachings, knowledge of the cosmos, sacred geometry, healing arts, and the mysteries of the soul. These weren't just theoretical lessons, but direct transmissions of consciousness, opening portals of awareness and energetic alignment. A fascinating example is the Temple of Luxor, which researchers like Schwaller de Lubitsch suggest was built to mirror the human body. The layout from the feet at the outer pylons to the head in the inner sanctum reflected the journey of the soul through the physical to the divine. Initiates walking through this temple weren't just moving through space, they were moving through the layers of their own being. These temple mysteries emphasized inner alchemy, the process of turning the lead of human nature into the gold of divine wisdom. The teachings echoed the Hermetic maxim, As above, so below. As within, so without. Modern spiritual seekers can still learn from these rites. Meditation, shadow work, solitude, and connection with higher truths are modern versions of those same steps. While we no longer walk through stone corridors guided by priests, we can still undertake the sacred journey within. The temples may now lie in ruins, but their spiritual blueprints remain. The legacy of Egyptian initiations reminds us that the true path to enlightenment is walked within. Through courage, surrender, and awakening, we too can access the hidden chambers of the Sula and emerge transformed. The ancient Egyptians didn't just write in symbols, they thought in them. Their entire worldview was shaped by a sacred language called Medu Neter, meaning words of the gods. Today we call it hieroglyphics, but to the Egyptians, these were far more than letters or words. They were living forces, energetic keys to unlocking the mysteries of life, nature, and spirit. Each hieroglyph had multiple layers of meaning: literal, symbolic, and spiritual. A simple image of a bird might represent not only the animal but also the air element, the human soul, or a specific divine vibration. These symbols weren't just artistic, they were vibrational codes meant to activate consciousness. For example, the Ankh, often called the key of life, is one of the most iconic symbols in Egyptian art. On the surface, it resembles a cross with a loop at the top, but its meaning goes deep. The loop represents eternity, or the soul, while the vertical line symbolizes the divine and the horizontal bar, the material world. Together, the Ankh unites spirit and matter, showing the path to eternal life. It was not just worn, it was used in healing, ceremonies, and spiritual initiation. Another powerful symbol is the Eye of Horus, which represents protection, healing, and divine perception. But it's also a mathematical code. Each part of the eye corresponds to a fraction: 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, etc. And together they add up to 63/64, representing the idea that in this world, we can only perceive a partial reality. The rest remains hidden until we transcend ordinary awareness. Even architecture in ancient Egypt was symbolic. The pyramids weren't just tombs, they were cosmic diagrams. The base represented the earth, the apex symbolized the heavens, and the entire structure mapped the journey of the soul rising toward enlightenment. Every measurement, angle, and orientation had astrological and energetic significance. The scarab beetle, another common motif, wasn't just decoration. It symbolized Khepri, the god of rebirth, who rolled the sun across the sky like the beetle rolls its dung ball. This wasn't a crude metaphor, it was a reminder that even the smallest forms in nature are mirrors of cosmic truths. Why did the Egyptians rely so heavily on symbols? Because they believed that true wisdom couldn't be spoken, it had to be experienced. Words could lie. Symbols transcended the ego. When a person meditated on a symbol, they weren't just analyzing it, they were entering into its energy field, receiving intuitive downloads from the divine mind. This is why many modern esoteric traditions like alchemy, tarot, and mystery schools still borrow from Egyptian symbolism. These signs speak across time, awakening ancient memory within us. To engage with Egyptian symbols today is to begin reading the universe as a sacred book. It's to decode the divine blueprint hidden in all things. The language may be old, but its voice still calls. Look beyond the surface. The truth is hidden in plain sight. In ancient Egyptian spirituality, death was never the end, it was a doorway to a greater reality. The Egyptians believed that the physical body was just one part of the human being. To them, the soul was a multi-layered entity, and understanding these layers was the key to achieving eternal life. This belief system gave rise to one of the most detailed and spiritually sophisticated views of the afterlife the world has ever seen. The Egyptian soul was made up of several parts, each with a specific role. The Ka was the vital life force, like a spiritual double that needed offerings and sustenance to survive. The Ba was the personality or soul bird, able to travel between worlds. The Ak was the immortal spark, the luminous spirit that could merge with the divine. There were also the Ren, the sacred name, the Ib, heart, the seat of wisdom and emotion, and the Shut, shadow or aura. All these aspects had to be in balance for the soul to reach its final destination. But the journey didn't end with death. It truly began there. The deceased entered Duat, the mysterious realm of the afterlife, where they faced a series of challenges and tests. These weren't just punishments, they were spiritual initiations. The soul had to pass through gates guarded by fierce deities, confront its own fears, and most importantly, undergo the weighing of the heart. In this central ritual, the deceased's heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'ata, principle of truth, justice, and cosmic harmony. If the heart was heavy with sin, lies, or selfishness, it was devoured by the monster Amit, and the soul ceased to exist. But if the heart was light, pure, and in alignment with Ma'atha, soul was granted entry into the field of reeds, a paradise of peace and eternal life. But what is most striking is how ethical and spiritual the Egyptian view of the afterlife was. You couldn't just buy your way into heaven, you had to live rightly, align with truth, and purify your soul. That's why the Book of the Dead, actually called the Book of Coming Forth by Day, was not just a collection of spells. It was a manual for spiritual awakening, both in life and beyond. These texts often say, as above, so below, and as within, so without. The afterlife was not just a future destination, it was a mirror of your current spiritual state. Heaven or hell were not external locations, but vibrational realities you tuned into through your actions, thoughts, and consciousness. In modern spiritual terms, the Egyptian afterlife system was like an esoteric map of ascension. It taught that the soul must undergo transformation, face its own shadow, and finally become an Akka, radiant being of light, reunited with the divine source. Through this lens, the Egyptian mysteries of death were really teachings about how to live fully, consciously, and with purpose, so that when the time comes to cross the veil, your heart is light and your soul ready to soar. The Egyptians believed that reality was built upon sound and vibration. The universe came into being through spoken word. The god Ptah is said to have spoken the world into existence. This reflects the deep belief that sound is creation, and thus chanting, hymns, and sacred phrases held enormous power. Words were spells, from spelling, and to utter them to the ancient Egyptians, language was far more than a tool for communication. It was a magical force, a bridge between the seen and unseen realm. Every word carried energy, and every symbol concealed layers of spiritual meaning. Their sacred writing system, known as Medu Neter, often translated as hieroglyphs, literally means words of the gods. Unlike ordinary writing, Medu Neter was believed to be divinely inspired. Each glyph was a living symbol, resonating with spiritual vibration. Writing something in hieroglyphs wasn't just recording it, it was activating it, calling its essence into being. That's why Egyptian temples, tombs, and sacred texts are covered in symbols. They were spiritual technologies, carefully designed to channel and hold divine power. For example, the Ankh, often called the key of life, wasn't just an artistic design. It represented eternal life, the union of masculine and feminine energies, and the opening of the gates between worlds. When held by a god in carvings, it symbolized the giving of life force, Ka, to the soul. The Eye of Horus, another powerful symbol, wasn't only a symbol of protection, it represented divine perception, the balance between logic and intuition, and the healing of the fragmented self. Even the way Egyptians wrote their names was deeply spiritual. The Ren, or sacred name, was believed to hold the essence of one's soul. To erase someone's name from history was to destroy their soul's chance of eternal life, a punishment worse than death. On the other hand, speaking or writing a divine name could invoke its power into reality. This is why many spiritual texts and amulets were filled with the names of gods, used as keys to access divine assistance. Another fascinating aspect is the numerological depth of Egyptian symbols. Every number had spiritual meaning. The number 7, for instance, represented spiritual completeness, while 3 symbolized the divine trinity, such as Osiris, Isis, Horus. These numbers weren't just mathematical, they were vibrational truths, woven into temple architecture, mythological stories, and rituals. The very layout of the temples followed sacred geometry, designed to mimic the structure of the cosmos and elevate human consciousness through symbolic, was to create reality. In a way, the entire Egyptian worldview can be seen as a symbolic language of the soul. Their art, rituals, and myths were all coded messages meant to awaken inner knowledge. You weren't just meant to read the symbols, you were meant to meditate upon them, to unlock their hidden frequencies and truths. Today, many spiritual seekers and mystery schools study these ancient codes not as history, but as living teachings. The symbols of Egypt remain keys to the sacred, still able to open portals within our own consciousness if we learn how to read their divine language. In ancient Egyptian spirituality, death was not the end, but the beginning of a sacred journey. The Egyptians believed life was a preparation for something far greater, the soul's return to the stars, to its divine origin. Their elaborate burial practices, sacred texts, and temple rituals were not rooted in fear of death, but in understanding it as a spiritual ascension. The most famous source of this belief is the Book of Coming Forth by Day, often called the Egyptian Book of the Dead. But this title is misleading. It wasn't about death, it was about rebirth. The text served as a map for the soul, guiding it through the trials of the Duat underworld, a mystical realm filled with symbolic obstacles and tests of spiritual purity. Each challenge mirrored internal struggles: fear, ego, falsehood, and attachment. The ultimate goal? To become an Akh, a fully transformed soul, radiant, eternal, and united with the stars. The stars, particularly the Orion constellation, and Sirius, Sopdet, held deep symbolic meaning. The pyramids at Giza, for instance, align with the belt of Orion. This wasn't coincidental. Orion was associated with Osiris, the god of resurrection and the afterlife, while Sirius was linked to Isis, his divine consort. Egyptians believed the soul, upon passing judgment and achieving purity, would ascend to Orion, returning to the celestial home of the gods. The heart of the soul played a central role in this journey. In the Hall of Ma'at, the soul's heart was weighed against the feather of truth and divine order. If the heart was light, free of lies, cruelty, and regret, the soul could pass into the eternal realm. If heavy with sin, it was devoured by Ammit, and the soul would cease to exist. This was not punishment, but a cosmic balancing of energies. Only harmony could ascend. But ascension wasn't just something that happened after death, it could begin in life. The Egyptians practiced spiritual purification, meditation, and ritual to awaken the Ba, personality soul, and integrate it with the Ka, life force. The greatest initiates sought to become Sahu, the perfected spiritual body, capable of transcending physical form. Temples like those in Luxor and Dendera weren't just places of worship. They were spiritual training centers, guiding initiates through symbolic death and rebirth while still alive. This belief in spiritual immortality is what gave Egyptians their legendary strength, wisdom, and peace in the face of death. They saw the material world as a mirror, a reflection of higher truths. Earth was the training ground, but the stars were home. To them, the soul's true destiny was to rise like the Bennu bird, phoenix, reborn through divine fire, to shine eternally among the stars. That's why the tombs were painted with star maps, celestial boats, and hymns to the heavens, not to mourn the dead, but to celebrate their return to eternity. This final secret of Egypt invites us to see our lives not as random events, but as steps in a sacred journey, one that doesn't end with the body, but continues beyond the veil, into the infinite light of the cosmos.